Just a sec, I need to exit out of my YouTube. There we go. All right, hello and welcome to the first live stream Q&A session for the YouTube channel. If you're here live in the chat, go ahead and let me know. Say hello. Let me know where you're from. I think we have people from all over here, so let me know where you're from, and then let me know where you are in school. Are you just starting out? Are you about to graduate? Are you studying for boards? Let me get a few things worked out here. We got a lot of people coming in from the Philippines too. Hello, hello. Sorry, I'm just getting set up with I have a new system here, so I have to get everything worked out. How's everyone doing today? Got Ivy coming in from the Philippines. Joyce is here from Moscow. Hi, Joyce. Hello from Colorado. Oh, Bridget is here from Colorado. Third year currently. Can I get these things to show up? There we go. Hi, Bridget. Third year means you're almost done, probably getting ready for board, so that's exciting. Ooh, wow, chat comes in fast. Okay, first I want to do a microphone test. Make sure my microphone's working. I think it is. Gain's okay. Please bring pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. I think we're good. If audio's having trouble, let me know. All right, so first we should probably have an explanation here. I was originally going to do a live stream just for only the members of the Patreon. And if you don't know what Patreon is, it's kind of a crowdfunding website. It allows people to pledge money to creators, to support creators. It's kind of like being a patron of the arts. Back in the old days, people would support artists that they liked just so that those artists could do what they wanted. Or we could think of this as like the PBS model of funding, that this channel is brought to you thanks to the support of viewers like you. And so Patreon is a way that people can support their creators, if they're artists, if they're musicians, if they have a podcast. Patreon is a website that allows people to support that. And so a lot of times what people do is they have special bonuses or special extras for people who contribute on Patreon. And so initially this live stream, this Q&A, was just going to be a hangout for the Patreon people. But I started thinking about that and I didn't really like it. For one thing, I listened to a podcast from the founder of Patreon and he was kind of like, don't do that. You don't need to have extras. You don't need to have special content. You don't need to have special merchandise on Patreon. That a lot of people just want to support you because they like you. And so that was part of it. The other thing is kind of part of the reason I started doing this was I wanted to make content that was freely available to everyone. I feel like as I was going through school and I was graduating, there were a lot of people making things and trying to sell them for a lot of money. And I feel like there are, when you're studying for boards, there are a lot of review courses that cost exorbitant amounts of money. And I don't really agree with that. Or I even had people in school that they were trying to sell their notes and they would like print them on colored paper just so you couldn't photocopy them. And that seemed kind of weird to me. The goal of doing this was to be able to provide free things for people, content for everybody that everybody could have. So I felt kind of bad putting up a paywall and saying you can only participate in this live stream if you pay money through the Patreon. So I decided to open it up to everybody. I think this will be a lot more fun. And so if you are a member of Patreon, I thank you very much for your support. There's a link in the description below if you want to check it out. If you're getting value out of the channel and you want to give some of that value back, that's a way you can do it, is by joining the Patreon. And so just know that if you join that Patreon, there's not necessarily going to be a lot of extras in terms of extra content. Sometimes I get people signing up being like, I thought if I signed up, I would get the rest of the channels. There's really not a whole lot extra there. I'm just going to have it there for some special behind the scenes kind of stuff. But that's just there if you want to give some support to the channel, to the website. Oh, we got Leo from Florida getting into herbal formulas. That's good. It's just started making some videos about formulas, so that's good. Who else we got here? Vanessa in London. I think London, are you like 6 hours ahead? Wisconsin. Stomach 38, what's the story? Yeah, so I was going to say, we can start off with some questions. If people have questions, we can go ahead and do that. Or if people don't have questions, I compiled a list from some emails I got because I wasn't sure if anybody would actually show up. So here we go. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. If you're watching this on the replay, you can put them in the comments and we can get to them next time. Go away, email. And I saw a stomach 38 question. I want to go back to it. Sorry, I don't know how to use this program. Is that Gil? Stomach 38. What's the story with stomach 38? Same side, opposite side. Stomach 38 is on the leg. It's the empirical point for shoulder pain. And so a lot of times we have a special category of points called empirical points. And basically what empirical means is they do something and we don't know why they do it. Like there's no theory or explanation as to why they do it. So when we say stomach 38 is the empirical point for shoulder pain, we really don't have any explanation in terms of channel theory as to why that should work. The stomach channel doesn't go to the shoulder. It's not a mirror image. There's no reason stomach 38 should work. It's just that over time people tried it and it worked, and so we do it. And so we have a couple points like this that we just call them the empirical point. So stomach 38 is the empirical point for shoulder pain. Usually what they do is you would have the patient sitting and you can needle the stomach 38 while they're sitting and then have them rotate the shoulder while you're stimulating the point, and there should be an increase in range of motion. So the original usage, I don't think you just add it to your point prescription. You would actually stimulate the needle and have the person move while they're doing it. This is similar to like low gen for neck pain. Low gen, you would put the needles in, usually have the patient sitting, put the needles in low gen, and while you're stimulating the needles, have them turn the neck. And sometimes they'll feel an immediate improvement in the range of motion while you're stimulating the needles. So stomach 38 is the same way. And as for what's the story with that, we don't know why it works. As for should you do it on one side, should you do it on the same side, should you do it on the opposite side, I've heard it go both ways. I've heard some people say, what if you have shoulder pain on the right side, needle stomach 38 on the right side. If you have shoulder pain on the right side, needle it on the left. I usually just do both because like needles are cheap. So I think there's no harm in just needling both, and it's something that you could just add it to the rest of your points, but I think the real way to do it is you would do this at the beginning, stimulate the point, have them move the shoulder around. If they feel some relief, that's good. Then you have them lie down and go through the full treatment. So that's a good question. Oh, then I just realized Gil said, how come it treats the other side? That's another thing. I think I would have to check Deadman, but I think Deadman says do it on the same side. I could be wrong, but I've heard other people say do it on the opposite side, and that's just a thing that sometimes you see. Sometimes we needle the left to treat the right. Sometimes we needle below to treat above, and so we can kind of vary with that. Sometimes I especially do that if there's something on the opposite side. something on the affected side that we can't needle into it. So like if someone has wrist pain, but they have an open wound or it's just too inflamed that you can't needle into that area, then I would go to the other side, or I do a mirror image on the bottom. But I think for stomach 38, you can do the same side. I usually just do both. Nika from the Philippines. What time is it in the Philippines? I feel like we're like a 16-hour time difference. Oh, and Gil is here from Israel. That's cool. Leo is asking, will this be available for a period of time? Like I said, I don't know how to use this. Yes, this will be available. I think this automatically gets recorded to YouTube and it'll just be there forever. Hopefully this sounds okay. I have sirens and stuff going on outside, so that's why usually when I make videos or record audio, I either do it at 6 in the morning or at like 10 p.m. at night, just because I have a lot of noise outside. So hopefully not too much noise is coming through. Oh man, 2 a.m. in the Philippines. You all either stayed up real late or got up really early. Yeah, Valerie is on the Patreon, so yeah, that's good. This will be recorded, and you can watch this later. Gil is also asking, can chi stagnation move a bone? Not that I know of. I think usually, so when you have chi stagnation, we have blood stagnation and chi stagnation. When we have blood stagnation, usually the symptoms are sharp stabbing pain. Sometimes with blood stagnation, we can get palpable clots. So sometimes even like hardening of organs, like liver cirrhosis, can be considered blood stagnation. I've never heard of it moving a bone though. And then with something less substantial like chi stagnation, usually that's diffuse pain, dull pain, more achy pain. So I wouldn't think so, but I've never encountered that. Maybe we should get some bone setting experts. There's a style of Tui Na called Jungu Tui Na, and they do bone setting. So maybe we should ask some of them. Hi, Michelle. Sound is clear. That's great. I've never used this microphone like this before, so this is a Blue Yeti microphone. I use this a lot for my voiceovers, and I was always really self-conscious about it because it's a condenser microphone. It picks up a lot of sound, even like background noises. And so I always was really nervous about my voiceovers because it would pick up a lot of mouth noises, like stuff like that. And so I was always really self-conscious about, I have a really fat tongue, so when I speak I make a lot of noises. So hopefully the microphone isn't picking that up. All right, so some people emailed me some questions. We can talk about some of those. Oh, I was gonna do this cool little overlay. I forgot to do my overlay at the beginning. So this is something that Chris emailed me. What's the difference between regulate chi and tonify chi? And here I think we're specifically referencing the names of herb categories. We have herbs that tonify chi, herbs that regulate chi, and some of these category names can be really weird. People are like, what does it mean to regulate blood? What's the difference between invigorate blood and regulate blood? What's the difference between transforming damp, drying dampness, and draining dampness? And so this is an example of one of those weird category things. What's the difference between regulate chi and tonify chi? Well, hopefully tonify chi is pretty straightforward. When we say tonify chi, we're talking about chi deficiency. So there's just chi is vacuous, there's not enough chi. When there's not enough chi, the organs aren't able to perform their functions. And so the way we deal with chi deficiency is we tonify chi. And in terms of herbs, when we're tonifying chi, we're using the sweet flavor to tonify chi. So when we say tonify chi, we're dealing with chi deficiency. Kind of the weirder one is, what do we mean when we say regulate chi? This is always kind of funny in intro classes. We'll get to this category, herbs that regulate chi, and I'll ask, what does it mean to regulate chi? And everybody looks at me confused, and they're like, it means to make it regular? Um, so, um, so when we say regulate chi, a simple way to think of it is you could just say for regulate chi, we're moving chi. And so if you just want to, if whenever it says regulate chi, if you just think move chi, that's probably good enough. Technically, we should go a step further and say when we say regulate chi, we're moving chi, but we're also making sure we're moving it in the proper direction. Remember that chi has a direction associated with it. Spleen chi goes up, stomach chi goes down, liver chi spreads outwards or goes up. Lung chi is supposed to go down. The lung is responsible for depurative downbearing. That lung chi is supposed to go down. So when we regulate chi, we're making sure that the chi is moving and moving in the proper direction. So another way we could phrase that is when we say regulate chi, we're treating two things. We're treating chi stagnation and rebellious chi or counterflow chi. So that's kind of the difference here when we talk about regulate chi versus tonify chi. When we say tonify chi, we're treating chi deficiency and we're using the sweet flavor in terms of herbs. When we say regulate chi, we're treating chi stagnation or rebellious chi. And to treat chi stagnation, we usually use the acrid flavor because the acrid flavor moves and disperses. And we also might be using the bitter flavor because the bitter flavor has a strong downward direction. So if we have rebellious chi, like rebellious stomach chi, or if we have lung chi coming up, like cough and wheezing, then we might use the bitter flavor to make sure that the chi is moving downward. So that's what we mean when we say regulate chi. We're talking about chi stagnation and counterflow chi. Some other weird categories that come up. Sometimes people ask what's the difference between, or what does it mean to regulate blood, or what's the difference between regulate blood and invigorate blood. This is just a weird Bensky thing. I think Bensky is the only one who uses the term regulate blood. But basically when we say regulate blood, we're just talking about all the things that we can do with the blood to make it regular. We can tonify the blood, we can invigorate blood, we can stop bleeding, we can cool the blood, we can clear heat and cool the blood. So all of those things fall under the category of regulate blood. It just turns out in terms of herbs, we already have an herb category, herbs that tonify blood, and we have an herb category, herbs that cool the blood. So when he says regulate blood, the two that are left over are invigorate blood and stop bleeding. So when he says regulate blood, that's what he's talking about, invigorating blood and stopping bleeding. But other books, I think, don't actually use that term. They consider those separate categories. Herbs that invigorate blood and herbs that stop bleeding. It's only Bensky that says herbs that regulate blood. Another interesting, in terms of herb categories, another one people have trouble with is the difference between draining dampness, drying dampness, and transforming dampness. So we have a lot of herb categories that deal with dampness. So when we have herbs that clear heat and dry dampness, we're drying the dampness out. And that's just kind of like the dampness disappears and goes away. And the way we dry dampness is using the bitter flavor. So that's dampness that can happen anywhere in the body, and we're using the bitter flavor to dry it out. When we talk about draining dampness, we're more specifically talking about promoting urination and getting water out of the body. So the kind of things we're dealing with there are usually either swelling and edema or Lynn syndrome, urination problems, UTI-like problems. So when we say drain dampness, there we're using the bland flavor to promote urination to get water out of the body. And so that's what we mean by drain dampness. And then we have another one, aromatic herbs that transform dampness. And so that's another one. What does it mean to transform dampness? What do we transform it into? As far as I know, I've heard some people say when we say transform dampness, we're transforming pathological dampness into regular fluids. As far as I know, that's not a thing. I think Wang Juyi, I don't have my Wang Juyi book. I think Wang Juyi says once something becomes pathological, it can never be turned back into something good or physiological. So my understanding is when we say transform dampness, we're specifically talking about the function of the spleen to transform dampness. So when we say aromatic herbs that transform dampness, we're talking about using the aromatic property to awaken the spleen so that it can perform its function of transforming dampness. So with herbs that clear heat and dry dampness, we're using the bitter flavor to dry out the dampness, and that can be dampness anywhere. That can be liver gallbladder damp heat, that can be lower jowl damp heat, that can be dampness anywhere in the body for herbs that clear heat and dry dampness. When we say herbs that drain dampness, we're talking about usually edema or urination problems. And with herbs that drain dampness, we're using the bland flavor to promote urination. When we say aromatic transform dampness, we're specifically talking about dampness in the middle jowl, and we're using the aromatic property to awaken the spleen so that it can perform its function of transforming dampness. So doing this makes me realize, like, I should really be wearing glasses, because, like, if I squint a lot, it's just because my eyesight is bad. So if I get real squinty, that's why. That's also why I have this, like, line. I need to start doing some facial things on yin tong. I'm developing this line because I scowl so much. My face is going to get stuck like that. Whew. Sorry, I saw some good ones back up here. I have to scroll back up. Oh, here's a good one. How do you use TCM body types in your practice? Are they useful? Do they translate across ethnic backgrounds? I think this is a really interesting one, because sometimes actually different styles talk about body types differently sometimes. Like sometimes in just TCM, they'll just talk about the general shape of your body, and sometimes the shape of your face, whether you have a round face or a square face or a triangular face. We can use that diagnostically, whether you're thin or whether you're more round. I think in Japanese style meridian therapy, they tend to look at like the sense organs. So if you have really big eyes, they might diagnose you as a liver type. If you have really big lips or a wide mouth, they might diagnose you as a spleen type. If you have large ears or two ears that are different sizes, they might diagnose you as a water type or a kidney type. So different people, different styles can look at that differently. And yes, in my practice, I do look at that. I guess not just body type. Usually when a person walks in, I'm looking at their body type, the sound of their voice, and things like that. And you can actually get some diagnostic information from that, their complexion and things like that. That after you've been doing this for a while, sometimes just someone walks in and you're like, that person just looks like they need gui pi tong. Or sometimes you'll talk to someone on the phone and they're really angry and shouty, and you're like, oh, this person needs some xiao yao san. I better make sure my xiao yao san is in stock. So yes, we can look at some of those body types. I wouldn't think of it in other terms, like some people talk about endomorphic and ectomorphic and mesomorphic. I wouldn't necessarily look at that. I'd be looking more with maybe the shape of the body, maybe the shape of the face, and especially things like the complexion and stuff like that. And then it's interesting talking about different ethnicities, because I've always been kind of curious about this, because I've had some Japanese practitioners say, like, if you have a lot of body hair, that means you're a lung type or a metal type. Like I'm a very hairy person, so they always diagnose me as being metal or a lung type. And I've always been kind of curious about that, because like we have one teacher that he's Persian, and he has a lot of body hair, like to the extent that his shirt floats above his chest because he has this thick layer of chest hair, and that's just because he's Persian. So I'm kind of wondering, like, is it like all Persian people are metal because they all have body hair? So I'm not sure to what extent that applies across ethnicities. And then sometimes it's interesting where like 5-element people will look at the color of a person's complexion, but what they will say is you can still see the color of the complexion underneath the color associated with their ethnicity. So it's not like everybody from Iceland is metal because they have a white complexion. It's not like that. That you can still see tints underneath it, whether the complexion is green or red or yellowish or something like that. But then another interesting thing is next week the students from the Lamp School in the Philippines invited me to come give a lecture about tongue diagnosis, and so something I'm interested in about that is I had one friend in school that she was Filipina, and whenever we looked at her tongue was always purple. And that was interesting because normally we associate purple with blood stagnation. But when we asked her questions like, do you have sharp stabbing pain? How's your menses? Do you have headaches? She had zero signs of blood stagnation. So that's we kind of concluded that maybe just genetically she has a purple tinted tongue. So I'm kind of wondering like, does the tongue color differ with certain ethnicities, and do we need to take that into account? So. I guess maybe we'll have to do a tongue comparison with different people to see if that's actually something that happens. Chris is saying, great live stream. Sorry, I got a guy. Great live stream. Acupuncture good points that are good for COVID-19 prevention. Ooh, I might need to avoid this. I think YouTube might say mean things to me if I start talking about COVID. But generally, because there used to be a really good lecture by Chen. You might still be able to find it. He did a couple YouTube videos about how they're treating COVID-19 in China with herbs, and so he gave a couple hour-long lectures about herbs. I think some of them got taken down by YouTube because they don't want people giving out medical advice on YouTube. But I will say you can look up things online about how they're treating COVID in China. I believe it's mostly with herbs. I'm not sure there's acupuncture protocols, but you can see they have a lot of different herbal protocols depending on what stage they're in. A lot of people have been taking Yuping Fengsan, jade windscreen powder, as kind of like an immunity booster, and then modifying it to deal with some dampness or some toxicity. So acupuncture, I'm not entirely sure. This is also, I have kind of weird opinions about this. I get some people, even before COVID, I've had people come in and say they want to boost their immune system. And so they're like, can we take herbs? Can I do herbs to boost my immune system? Or can I do acupuncture to boost my immune system? And that's always kind of a weird conversation to have with people, either students or patients, just because there's not entirely a concept of an immune system in Chinese medicine. That yes, we have the Wei Qi, we have the defensive Qi, but we don't really think of that in terms of like white blood cells. So we can make some analogies, but it can be kind of difficult because normally people would say, oh, the Wei Qi is associated with the lung, so if we want to strengthen a person's immune system, we should strengthen the lung. And my opinion is that may or may not be true, that we should still look at the signs and symptoms, look at what people are experiencing, look at the other things like digestion, looking at their body shape and other constitutional things. And so I guess to me, strengthening a person's immune system means strengthening their constitution. So if a person has a liver constitution, then maybe strengthening their immune system means balancing out that liver constitution. Or if a person has a very earthy constitution with digestive problems, maybe when you balance and harmonize their middle jiao, then that will help them out. If a person is really livery, I don't think you should necessarily go in and strengthen their lung qi to get to their immune system. I don't know if any of that makes sense. But basically, if somebody comes in and they have a chronic cough, or they say I have a tendency to get sick easily, or things like that, then I would say, oh, let's strengthen the lung qi and use Yu Ping Feng San and stuff like that. But if a person is just like, I'm really spleeny and I'm worried about getting sick, I would address their spleen, not necessarily go to that. I don't know if that made sense. Boop, 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 boop. Are abdomen points contraindicated in all trimesters of pregnancy? Ooh, that's something I should know the answer to, and I'm not sure that I do. This is something that I would err on the side of caution, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. It's something that I would probably avoid it all the time, but there are probably pregnancy experts that can give you a better answer to that. I don't treat a lot of pregnancy patients. Where I was working before, we had somebody who specialized in pregnancy, and she was a woman, and she had had children. So whenever anybody came in for fertility or pregnancy things, I just sent them to her because I figured they would relate to her a lot better than they would relate to me. If anything, I treat more men's issues or men's health. So might need to look that one up in a book. Sorry about that. Does acupressure and acupuncture have the same effect? I think that depends on who you ask. I've heard some people say that like doing acupressure for 10 seconds is equivalent to inserting a needle. I don't know if that's true. I think it might depend on the person doing it. I think having somebody else do it is better than having you do it to yourself, if you can. But I don't know if they're equivalent. To me, I would say they're not. Just in terms of needling, the kind of chi sensation I can get on a needle is just not quite the same as pressing and rubbing or something like that. So I'm not sure, but I'm sure that other people have different opinions on that. Oh, Michelle is saying Chen has a great video up. That's good to hear that it's still up. Because I remember there was one on YouTube, and then I think it got taken down. I think he did some stuff either with Pacific College or with eLotus. I think they still exist somewhere, but I remember there was one that got taken down on YouTube. So, but if you Google Chen, I believe it's John Chen. He wrote a book about he wrote a Materia Medica, and he has some very good lectures about herbs. So. He had a nice handout that went through the different stages, whether you were preventative stage, whether you were early stage, whether you were more serious stage, and whether you were like lingering symptoms afterwards. He had some really good information about that. Matsui, does TCM have a role in psychiatric clients? I would say yes. We do. There is a specialty about that, and we do traditionally talk about certain psychological disorders. The Chinese term is like Dian Quan. So like mania, depression, things like that. Also, it's kind of fun going through and reading some of the traditional point indications, that some of them have like really interesting ways of describing those disorders, like when a person takes off their clothes and ascends to high places and sings. And then, so that's the person, if they have a lot of heat and they become manic, we can describe it that way. There's a lot of talk about mad laughter, which again, I think is just like describing mania, where a person starts laughing hysterically. Talk about like pulling at invisible strings, or if a person, I think, becomes delirious or starts hallucinating and starts just babbling coherently, they'll describe that as talking with ghosts. So we do traditionally have some things with that. In a modern context, I'm not sure. Usually when I treat mental emotional things, they tend to be more mild things like just anxiety, depression, stuff like that. But I do believe there are people who treat more severe disorders like schizophrenia and things like that. I think it does have a role, but maybe it's a complementary role. I would never say that you can cure someone with acupuncture doing acupuncture alone. I think in a modern context, it could be that if they're receiving some other care, then it could be that doing acupuncture on top of it or herbs on top of it could be helpful. Lori is there we go. Lori is acupuncture enhanced if combined with moxibustion? I would generally say yes. And this is something I feel bad about because I really don't like doing moxa. I don't. Part of it is because where all the offices I've been at, it's doing the pole moxa is very smoky, and so I think my landlord wouldn't like it if I did pole moxa. And then I just don't like a lot of people do the cone moxa, and I'm bad at it, and I don't have the patience for it, and I think that's why I could never do Japanese meridian therapy because they do a lot of cone moxa, and I'm just bad at it. It sticks to my fingers. It doesn't stick to the point. I can never. I feel like there's such a small range before where it's like if you burn the moxa cone down not far enough, it has no effect. If you burn it down too far, then you burn the patient. I was just really always really bad at it. But I would say it's definitely, to answer your question, yes, that a lot of Japanese meridian style people, that they do a lot of moxa and find very good benefits. I know that J.R. Worsley 5-element people, I'm not sure if this is the style or just certain practitioners I know, but I do know a lot of people that before they insert the needle, they'll do 5 cones of moxa on the point as a way to prepare the point. They'll say it's like we're warming the guest house so that it's prepared for needle insertion. So they actually do, before they needle a point, they do 5 cones of moxa and then insert the needle. I've heard some traditional sayings that like if you're looking for an acupuncturist, if you go into their office and it does not smell like moxa, that means you shouldn't go there. That acupuncture is so essential that if the practitioner is not regularly doing moxa, that just means they're not a good acupuncturist. So that kind of depends, but yeah, it smells horrible. Yeah, it smells horrible. It's difficult to do. It gets into your clothing, and then sometimes we have to worry about in sort of more modern terms, a modern practice. We have to worry about the patient too. That if the patient is allergic to smoke, maybe we can't do it. If the patient doesn't like the smell will stay on their clothes, so maybe the patient is coming in and they don't want the smell on their clothes afterwards. So. That's another thing to keep in mind. But yeah, it's just something I don't like doing. And then that's kind of another interesting thing is I feel like we have a lot of different tools that we can use, and I think that people tend to gravitate towards the things that they enjoy and work on them. So like I had a friend that she really liked moxa. She loved getting moxa when she was in school. She would also always have people moxa her. So when she's in practice now, she does a lot of moxa on other people because that's what worked for her. Whereas other people, they had some injury and they got cupping and it worked really well. So now that they're in practice, they do a lot of cupping. So it kind of depends on that. But me, I just never really liked moxa, so I've never done it a whole lot. I remember I had one patient that like didn't want acupuncture; they only wanted moxa, and I always dreaded that because it was just pole moxa, so I'd just be sitting there circling pole moxa on her low back for half an hour, and she liked it; it felt great, but I was like, ugh. So do. Any thoughts on adaptogens? I don't know. I don't know. I guess it's sometimes people ask me things like this, and it's hard just because I pretty much stick only to Chinese medicine. I'm actually not very much into the modern application of things. So there are some people who really like to go down, they like to take herbs and break them down into their components and try to figure out what the active ingredient is and how that works on the body. And I think that's really cool. I'm glad that other people are doing it. I've never been much into it. Usually I just diagnose in terms of TCM and then apply the herbs in terms of TCM. Um, so I know that some people consider Ren ginseng to be an adaptogen. There are other things like maca root and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, generally, I think they probably won't hurt you. So try it. If you like it, keep doing it. If you don't like it, don't do it. But in terms of treating patients, I usually don't think of it that way. Ooh. Leo is saying, ooh, I like that line. Leo is saying, I don't clearly understand the difference between how damp heat and damp cold originate. Ooh, that's a good one. Um, because some of these are like dampness is kind of weird. It's kind of difficult to describe because we can talk about dampness in a lot of different contexts. Because sometimes we talk about pathogen, evil chi. We can talk about pathogenic chi or pathological factors as being either external or internal, and dampness is one of those that can be both. You can have external dampness coming in from the environment, or you can have internally generated dampness. And sometimes the symptoms are similar, but sometimes they're very different, and sometimes the way we go about treating it is similar, and sometimes it's different. And so it can be kind of weird that we can have dampness from the environment. Say you're living in a very humid place, you're in Sichuan province, or you're in a season where there's a lot of dampness. That dampness can invade the body and get into the channels and cause heaviness and joint pain and B syndrome and arthritis. Excuse me. We can also talk about internally generated dampness, which basically certain foods can engender dampness, and normally your spleen is supposed to take care of that. But if your spleen is not functioning properly, then that dampness can accumulate either from food, or you can just have fluid stagnating in your body and congealing into dampness. And basically, dampness is very difficult. Dampness is very stubborn. It's a very yin pathogen. And basically, it's one of those pathogens that combines very well with other pathogenic factors. So it's kind of like we have wind. You usually don't have just wind. You can have wind heat, wind cold, wind phlegm. Wind can combine with a lot of things. We can say the same thing with dampness. We can have damp heat, cold damp, things like that. So whether you have damp heat or damp cold is probably going to depend on the constitution of the person. That if the person just has a lot of yang energy, and they're a very hot person, then if they have dampness, it's probably going to combine with heat and become damp heat. If the person is a very cold person, they're a very yin person, they live in a cold environment, or they eat a lot of cold foods, then the dampness is probably going to combine with cold, and you'll have damp cold. Stagnation tends to lead to heat too. So if you have things that are stagnating, sometimes that stagnation, it's like a swamp. When things stagnate, they start to heat up. So stagnation especially can turn into damp heat. Sorry, I'm making sure I'm reading this right. And the word beer flu. I'm not sure I know what beer flu is, but I'm really interested now. I kind of want to Google that right now. What is beer flu? Are we just talking about like hangover or? So now we have a follow-up question. What about damp heat, but the heat comes from yin deficiency? This is really, it's difficult. Damp heat by itself is very difficult because, like I said, dampness is a yin pathogen and heat is a yang pathogen. So it's kind of like when you have dampness, your initial inclination would be to use warm herbs that dry out the dampness. But if you have damp heat, then you would exacerbate the heat. And when you have, if you have a if you have damp heat, if you want to take care of the heat, you would use cold bitter herbs. But if you have damp heat, then those cold bitter herbs could damage the spleen and make the dampness worse. So it's kind of like you got both sides going on. And then it becomes more complicated when we have yin deficiency, because yin deficiency is characterized by dryness. So it's kind of like you have dampness, which is too much moisture, it's damp, and then you have yin deficiency, which is dryness and giving you heat. So that's very difficult. That's what we call that like a complex situation where you have two opposites. So with that yin deficiency, you would have two opposites. And so kind of you would have to look at the location of where specifically is the dampness or in the damp heat and where is the yin deficiency. It could be that they're in two different locations. So you could have like kidney yin deficiency and then maybe some maybe liver damp heat or something like that. And so it's something that with the herbs you could target the different areas. You can do both at the same time. We do have formulas that are able to treat those opposites, but you would want to know where is the dampness and where is the yin deficiency, and you might be able to target your treatment. This might also get into the discussions about treating the root and treating the branch, and which one do you want to do. Some people might just separate. I think something happened. Some people might just separate the two. That maybe they'll do a 1 week treatment to get rid of the dampness. We'll use if the patient can take it, we'll use hard-hitting herbs to get rid of the dampness and do that for a week, and then we'll come back in and then tonify yin and treat the root. So some people will separate them. Some people will try to treat them both at the same time. Some people they'll take care of the branch with acupuncture and take care of the root with herbs. You do have some options with that, and it might depend on where the pathogens are, the constitution of the patient, and things like that. Still curious about this beer flu thing. Is that just keyword for COVID? Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, we're being sneaky. Let me see. What was the additional? What was the original question? Patients, less, more, safety. It's been interesting dealing like I guess maybe we're not necessarily talking about treating the flu. We're just talking about the logistics of being having a practice in the middle of a pandemic. So that's been kind of interesting that some people have been, at least in my area, some people have been shutting down. When the pandemic started, they shut down completely, closed their doors. Some people were very adamant about continuing to see patients. I think nowadays it kind of depends on the local laws as well. I think nowadays a lot of people are still treating patients. I'd say it's definitely patient volume is lessened. And a lot of people are taking extra precautions between patients. So instead of seeing people back to back, they'll stretch it out so they have time to clean everything up and wipe down the surfaces and everything like that. A lot more precautions are in place. I knew one person that she does facial acupuncture, and it was kind of cool that she created a plexiglass screen so that there was a screen between her and the patient, and she could still needle into the face and have like a physical barrier between. So some people are getting really creative about that. But as far as I know, a lot of practitioners are still alive and kicking and still treating patients. We're in California, so I think I have somebody down the street that they're still doing massage. They just do massage outside, and it's just because we're in California. It's still 70 degrees. It's still 70 Fahrenheit. It's still warm enough that they can do that. They've been doing massage outside, and probably can't do that other places in the country. But I think it's been difficult business-wise, but people are still plugging along. 8-point diagnosis. Oh, I like scrolled way down. 8-point diagnosis. I'm not entirely sure what that is. Is that like 4-point needle technique? Oh yeah, back to that other conversation. School is an interesting thing too because they initially shut down. Like, I think that's really been a thing that they a lot of the schools have closed and gone online. And actually, that's I don't teach at a school anymore just because I didn't want to teach online. So Zoom classes seem difficult. So I think around here, some of the schools are opening. They're having in-person lab time. It's just kind of restricted. I have a friend who teaches nursing, and he's kind of freaking out because it's like, how do you teach people how to intubate on Zoom? And so they've been giving him restricted hours in the clinic. So I think they've been doing the same thing with acupuncture, that they've had limited opportunities to practice point location and practice needling and things like that. Yeah, here saying that they opened up their clinic. Yeah, I think the school here opened up their clinic, and they have a lot of PPE precautions. They're taking a lot of precautions. I'm not sure that clinic is open for all of the students or if it's just the interns. But I know it's been kind of difficult. And I know that a lot of people are frustrated, and I think that's very understandable. That acupuncture and Chinese medicine is a hands-on, in-person thing to do, and it's hard to be like, it's hard to try to learn that stuff online, and it can be really frustrating to be like, I signed up for this class to take it in person, and now I have to take it online. Sorry, I'm just scrolling up to see if I feel like there's a bunch of questions I missed just because I can't read comments quickly enough. What did you use to study for boards? I always avoid this question because I would not recommend my method of studying for boards. Yeah, so I'm in California. I took both Kale and I took Nationals. I'm not sure if Nationals is different now, but when I was in school, you could actually start taking your national exams while you were still in school. So a lot of people took it during their last semester. So I did that, and you can take it's great because you can take one module at a time, so you can focus on one thing. But also, I'm not sure if it's different that when I was in school, Nationals had a reputation of being like really easy, and so I just didn't study a whole lot. And because you can take it again, I thought, oh, I'll just go in and try it, and if I fail, I'll just take it again and study more next time. Because at the time, for the California test, you could only sit for the California test once. They only held the test every 6 months. So if you failed the test once, you had to wait 6 months before you could take it again. But Nationals, I think you only had to wait like 2 weeks. So I didn't study a whole lot for Nationals. So I would not recommend that. I think mostly what I did was HP Kim. The HP Kim book was really good for Nationals, and so I would kind of flip through the section. Like if I was doing biomed was the one I was, or biology or whatever it's called, was the one I was most worried about because that's I'm not very good at. I'd kind of flip through the section in HP Kim before I went into the test. Acupuncture and there were some weird things that I knew I needed to look at. I remember getting tests about there's something about the lines on the hands that we didn't really learn in school. There's something about diagnosis in children using different lines on the thumb or something. So some of that stuff I had to review, but in general I just kind of flipped through it. And by the time I got to herbs, I was so over it. I actually just showed up to the testing site half an hour early and flipped through HB Kim and then went in and took the test. So I would not recommend that. Kale, the California exam was even worse. because they have a lot of there's a lot of programs to help prepare for kale. You have some people say you should study for 300 hours. Some people say you should study for 1,000 hours. They have a bunch of different programs, people with flashcards and things like that. I didn't really do that. That was another one where, like, basically I had signed up to take the test, but then I was thinking I might move out of California. So I wasn't sure I was even going to stay in California. So I was like, I'll just take the test and see what happens. And if I don't pass, I'll just leave the state. So I didn't study a whole lot for kale either, and I passed it by 1 point. So again, I would not take that approach. One thing I did do is basically the way I started, what I thought might be a good strategy, because I didn't do the note cards or the flashcards or any of the official review courses. I thought maybe a good place to start would be I got the Machiocho Foundation text and went through all of the Zong Fu patterns. And so he breaks it down really as spleen. Here are the 10 possible patterns with a spleen, excess and deficiency. And they'll talk about the signs and symptoms for each one. He'll talk about the tongue and pulse for each one. And then he'll give a point prescription for each one. And then he'll give an herbal formula for each one. So I thought, oh, that sounds like a good thing to do, because just by going through Zong Fu patterns, I'm studying symptoms, I'm studying diagnosis, I'm studying tongue and pulse, and I'm studying points and herbs. So I thought that would be a good way to study. And it turns out I got through 3 of the organs and got tired of it and said, screw it, I don't want to be in California anyway. The other thing I looked at, if you're doing California exam, I would say make sure that you look. I think they give you a packet or they have some information. Make sure you look at that and look at the terminology, because I think they use different translations for tongue and pulse than what we used in school. And so, like when I was in school, when we talked about huamai, we always said slippery pulse. I think they say rolling pulse. And when we say choppy pulse, they say a rough pulse. So some of their terms are a little bit different. So I'd say make sure you know that, just so when you get to the test, you don't say like rolling pulse. What's a rolling pulse? Just know that rolling means slippery. So I would go over that. What's your zodiac sign? I always feel bad about this. I always feel like people are being judgmental. Chinese zodiac, I was born in the year of the rat. 1984. This is the year of the rat. Oh yeah, this is why it's a crappy year. Apparently, there's a name for it. We'd always just call it your Harari year, like Harari points, but apparently when it's the year that you were born in is the current year. So it's like I was born in the year of the rat, and this year is the year of the rat. A lot of people think, oh, that's cool, that should be good. It's actually, in Chinese astrology, it's not good. That means you're going to have a crappy year, so maybe that's why this has been a crappy year for me. But so I was born in the year of the rat. Turns out rats are jerks. They're small and squeaky and conniving and planning. Rats are jerks, so I think that's fitting. So kind of the story of the 12 animals of the zodiac. There are a couple different versions of the story, but I think it's the Jade Emperor got the animals around, and he said we're going to have a race. And whoever finishes the race first, that's how we're going to decide the order of the animals in the Chinese zodiac. And so he got together, had this race, and at some point along the course, there was a river. And the rat was in the lead, but he got to this river and he couldn't cross the river. So he turned to the ox and said, hey, ox, why don't you, I'll ride on your back and we can cross the river together. So the rat got on top of the ox and they swam across the river. But then as soon as they got to the other side, the rat jumped off and scurried on ahead, and the rat came in first place. So that's why in the order of the Chinese zodiac, it's rat comes first, ox comes second. I think after that it's tiger, because the tiger could swim across the river. After that was dragon, maybe, because dragons can fly. Dragons shouldn't have a problem with the river. I don't know. Do Chinese dragons fly? I don't remember. Yeah, so I was born in the year of the rat, November 28th, Sagittarius. But I never know if that's good or bad. Vertigo and TCM. Whew, this might be difficult off the top of my head because I feel like this is something where if we go into Maciocha, Maciocha has that book. I forget the name of it, but it's gold. We just call it the Maciocha Gold. He has a good book where he like takes every disease or chief complaint and then he breaks down all of the possible patterns. So dizziness and vertigo, we can have a couple different patterns. Like everything, we can have excess and deficiency. It could be that we have dampness and phlegm causing dizziness. It could be that there's a blood deficiency or there's just not enough blood getting to the head, things like that. So it's kind of like we would want to do a breakdown of what's the underlying cause. Is it, and we can do that 8 principle thing. Is it excess or is it deficient? If it's excess, there might be some dampness or phlegm, and we have to do points and herbs for that. If it's more like a blood deficiency, it might be like tonifying blood to deal with it. Oh, Tristan from the Philippines. Scalp acupuncture. I know there's like 1 or 2 different styles. I feel like I just did just because of the teacher that I learned from. We just did. I don't know what the name. It's the style in the Shanghai book where it's the lines are called MS. So I usually just use those. But I think there are a couple different styles. I just used whatever I learned. I can't remember what it's called, but I think it was in a textbook called the Shanghai. So I don't know. And then it's basically like I only know a couple, like the balance lines and the stuff like that. But hey, so I guess I have 2 funny stories about this. One was the reason I first got into acupuncture was actually I went to India. I did a lot of yoga in college, and when I graduated, some people I did yoga with were going to India. So I went to India with them for kind of a yoga retreat thing. And it just so happened that where we were staying, there was a hospital that was doing free acupuncture. It was an acupuncture clinic, so they'd have people from the local villages would come and they could get acupuncture for free. And so I kind of hung out there, and there were some other Americans who were volunteering there, and so that's how I kind of got interested in Chinese medicine. Ironically, I started Chinese medicine in India. But I remember one of the things that struck me was they had a post-stroke patient come in. That he had 1 stroke 6 months prior and another stroke 8 or 10 months prior. And so he came in a wheelchair. He had hemiplegia. He couldn't move 1 arm and 1 leg, so he came in a wheelchair. And they did acupuncture on him every day. They did a lot of tuina and massage and stuff. They did acupuncture every day, and they did a lot of scalp acupuncture. And I don't know if it was just like the needles they were using, or if it was the patient, or if it's just the nature of scalp acupuncture. But apparently it was very painful because we'd be there and we could hear like this yelling coming from the other side of the building. And we're like, what's going on? And you're like, oh, that's just our stroke patient. He's getting his scalp acupuncture. So every once in a while you're like, oh, Babu. But yeah, I got acupuncture every day for 2 weeks, and at least after 2 weeks when I left, he was up and walking around. So that's kind of one of the reasons I got interested in acupuncture, is they had this patient who came in a wheelchair. He got acupuncture every day, and then he was able to walk. That seemed pretty cool. It's like, that's not just a placebo. I had another scalp story. Oh, my other scalp story. I had a patient. I don't remember if it was post-stroke or not. It might have been post-stroke, but anyway, they were complaining about balance problems. And so I thought, oh, balance problems, I'll do scalp acupuncture, I'll do the balance line on the scalp to help with this. The thing is, I didn't remember where the balance line was. I was like, is it, I know it's back here kind of by due 16. I was like, is it half a soon out? Is it 1.5 soon out? I didn't know, so I'm just going to guess. And so I just guessed, like, I put some needles back here, and then I went out and I found one of the teachers who teaches scalp acupuncture, and I said, I don't remember where the balance line is. Can you tell me? And she was like, oh, it's 1.5 soon. I was like, I totally got it wrong. I totally stuck my location was very wrong. The next week, the patient came in, and she was like, I don't know what you did, but my balance is so much better this week. It's like there was a noticeable improvement. And so I thought that was kind of funny. I went back and talked to that teacher, and I said, I totally needled the completely wrong place. Or it wasn't completely wrong. It was the right area, but the soon measurement was wrong. But the patient still said she got a lot better. And my teacher was like, she likes to slam the table and be very loud she's a small Chinese woman, but she has a very intimidating personality. And she was like, of course it worked. Head has a lot of nerves in the head. You stick a needle anywhere, it's going to have some effect. And so I thought that was really nice. So she was kind of like, if you get it in the right place, it'll have a better effect. But there's a lot of nerves in the head. You stick a needle anywhere, it's going to have some effect. And so I thought that was kind of a great way of thinking about it. That even if you're not exactly right, you can still get some good effects. Oh, what do you think? Should we wrap it up soon? I think we've been here for a while. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, Switzerland. Sorry, don't your name. Reading from Switzerland. A favorite TCM book? Yes, my favorite book is that Wang Ji book. I keep looking around here because for some reason I think I have it in this room, but by far my favorite book is Applied Channel Theory by Wang Ji. It's based on lectures by Wang Ji, and it's compiled or translated by Jason someone. Here, let's try this. Let's see if we can do it. After this, I'll put a link to it in the description. But let's see if I do this, if this will work. Amazon. But this is by far my most favorite. I don't know, maybe my internet doesn't work. It's by far my most favorite book on acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I think my computer's too slow to make this work. I was gonna pull it up on Amazon and share the screen so you could look at it. Hopefully my whole computer didn't just freeze. Applied Channel Theory by Wang Ji. I made a video about an intro to channel theory, and I think I talked about that book sometime. So at least in terms of acupuncture, that is by far my most favorite book, because he goes through the way he talks about channels. It seems like I read it, and in every chapter I was like, oh my god, this is great. Like why didn't anybody explain it to me like this before? And so he goes through the 6 channels and talks about the 6 channels. Then he goes through the extraordinary channels and explains just the way he explains things and talks about things is really great. Then he goes through point categories. He goes through the ideas of different types of point combinations. I feel like somebody asked a question like that before and I missed it. Somebody was talking about point pairs and I missed that question. So if I didn't get to your question, put it in the comments below and we'll do it next time. And then he talks about really it's a lot about palpating the channels too, which I feel is something that we didn't, at least in my school, we didn't learn a lot. That we take a very Machiocha Zhang Fu approach, and so Wang Ji was talking more about a channel approach and talking about diagnose based on the channels and just kind of like how the channels play a part of the physiology of the body. That the channels are part of a system. They're not just like buttons that you press. They're part of a system. And so that's by far my favorite book that when I was in school, I had a friend who said, "Here, you should read like if you want to know real Chinese medicine, you should read this book." And it turned out he worked at the library, so I checked it out from the library, and he did something to the system that I was able to check it out for 2 years instead of 2 weeks, and so I kind of kept that book for a while. But they had like 3 copies. And that's something I recommend to other people. And basically, whenever I recommend that to people, they have the same reaction. They're like, "Oh, this is so clear. Why didn't anybody explain this to me before?" I would say I had some classes that they tried to make that required reading in their points one class, and I feel like it might be a little bit too much if you're just starting out. When I read it, I'd already gone through the points curriculum. I was like in my second or third year, and it was kind of a good overview of the stuff that I had already learned. And so it's kind of like when you first learn some of that stuff, when you talk about the channels and point categories and yuan source points and things like that, it's kind of at the very beginning, and it's really confusing because you don't know anything. When you later come back to it, it makes a lot more sense. So I kind of used it as a way to review things, or just kind of put it all together in a way that made more sense once it had some context. I do think maybe it would be a little bit confusing if that was your first introduction to it. So I think maybe it's better to do in your second year rather than your first year, but that's by far my favorite book. There's another book I like. It's a bit more interesting. It's kind of 5 elementy. Nourishing Destiny by Lonnie Jarrett. I think Lonnie's mad at me. I kind of said something about that book, and I think he got upset at me about it. But that's kind of a really cool book. He's kind of I'm not sure if he's officially Worsley 5 element, but he's kind of in the 5 element thing. So it's kind of 5 elementy, but it does just the background of it is really nice when he's relating Taoism to Chinese medicine, and some of the things, some of the more philosophical things he talks about in that book, I really liked. It's kind of dense, but I like that book too. That one I never bought it. I just checked it out from the library though. That's another one I checked out for like 2 years. Oh, good. It says found it. Yeah. The Wang Ji. I would definitely recommend that. I feel like a lot of the other books are much more specific as well. That if you're like interested in a specific topic, then people will have fertility books, or people will have books on mental emotional stuff, or people have books on the divergent channel. So those are good. But the Wang Ji is kind of a very all-encompassing book in terms of channel theory. And it's like kind of fun to read too. It's not like you're like sometimes when you're reading a textbook, it's not quite like reading a textbook. It's a little bit more fun, and the illustrations are really good, and it talks about dumplings, and I like dumplings. Ooh, Taylor's asking about a specific course. I'm not familiar with that course, so I'm not sure. Oh, hey, Julio's here. I recognize your thing. What's the question? Using dried animals in Chinese. I haven't used a lot of the animal ones. That's not true. I have used formulas with D-Long, earthworm in it. I think whenever I've used those, it's been in a prepared form, so I didn't like have the D-Long. I just used it. It was already in like a granule or a pill. So D-Long is earthworm. It's really good for like hemiplasia, clearing out the channels. So I've used that. The only time I've used geckos is when I wanted to make a tincture. So I actually ordered a pair of geckos and soaked them in alcohol. Trying to think of any other dried animals I've used. I don't know, but so I think like those are the only ones I've used, and I've usually used them like a lot of those. It's you prepare them by soaking them in alcohol, and you make a tincture that you would take over, like you would just soak it for 6 months and then like take a shot every evening. So I think that's good. Oh, Jason Robertson, that's right for the other book. Sorry, backtracking. Wang Ji. Wang Ju is with a J-U, and then Jason Robertson is the co-author. I was about to say Jason Blabick or something Balick, and he wrote a different book with. He wrote an herb book. But yeah, dried animals. I feel like it's kind of like the idea is animals are really good at tonifying substance like blood and essence, and so they can be good in that way. But I also feel like you could also just eat meat, and so I feel like sometimes some of those things, like thinking about dietary adjustments, might be you could go that route instead of using animals as herbs. So it could be that like just thinking like eating red meat or eating lamb or eating whatever is appropriate to the diagnosis. Sometimes you could, if a person doesn't want to like take geckos or snakes or something like that, it could be that there's some food therapy that would also work. Oh, Helena, let me see if I can. Only has male acupuncturists. Oh, I probably shouldn't have put that up there. Yeah, that's kind of interesting just because around here, it's most, like in America, it's like Chinese medicine is 80% female. Maybe that's not true. I think acupuncture patients are 80% female, but there's still a lot of just here in the schools and the classes, it's mostly women doing it. And so a lot of times, if anything, I've had the opposite problem, that I've had people that they only want to see a female practitioner. Or I've even had, like in some of the charts would say no men in the room at all, that they just didn't want a man in the room. So, so that's been kind of interesting. That if anything, people, it's kind of like I did massage for a while too, and that was it's like very hard to be a male massage therapist because so many people want only a female to work on them. And sometimes that happens with acupuncture too, that you have patients that they're only comfortable with a female practitioner. So sometimes that's difficult. Sai, where did you study TCM? Have you been to China? I studied TCM. I'm in San Diego right now, and this is where I studied in San Diego. Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. I think they recently changed the name to Pacific College of Health and Science because they're branching beyond just Chinese medicine. So I did a 4-year master's program at Pacific College at PCOM. Sometimes I have to tell people that too, that when I went through the program, it was a master's of science in Chinese medicine. They've since changed the degree to doctor, but I don't have a doctorate. I just have a master's degree, so sometimes people try to address me as doctor. Legally, I do not have the title of doctor, so sometimes for ethical reasons, I have to tell people, don't refer to me as doctor. Technically, I'm not a doctor. So yeah, I studied here in San Diego for 4 years. It was a 4-year master's program. I haven't been to China, and I've been wanting to go. One of my teachers would always do a trip to Chengdu, and they would do kind of an exchange with the hospital in Chengdu. And I didn't go when I was in school just because I didn't have the money to do it. And then after school, we tried to go a couple times, but the trip always ended up getting canceled, and so I never got a chance to go. I feel like nowadays it might be hard for an American to go to China. So I'd still like to go. We might have to wait a little bit before travel is easy again. All right, I think maybe we should wrap it up. I was planning on doing 1 hour. We're over an hour. Feel like we should save some for next week. So I think we'll go ahead and leave it there. Sorry if I didn't get to your questions. I have trouble reading the screen and talking at the same time. Like, this is why I'm really bad at Zoom classes, because I can't read the chat and talk to the camera at the same time. So if I missed your questions, I probably didn't do it on purpose. So if you ask something in the chat and I didn't get to it, go ahead and leave it in a comment below, and I'll look at the comments, and then we'll do this again next week, and I can answer some of the questions in the next one. I'll have those ready for next time. And let's see about next week. Because this is another thing, I'm not sure when the best time to do a live stream is, because I tried to do a poll online and everybody gave me a different time. And I know that people are in different parts of the world, so sometimes are more convenient depending on where you are. So I'm not sure if we're going to stick to the same time or if we're going to try to jump around so that different people can pop in at different times. And I also I got called in for jury duty. Apparently in California, when you get called for jury duty, you just have to be like on call for the entire month. So there's a possibility I'm going to get called in for jury duty next week. And so if that happens, I probably couldn't. I can't be live on Friday morning. So I think I'll know next week if what my availability is going to be like. But we'll do this again. I think if you subscribe to the channel and select notifications, then it will alert you when we're going to go live. Or if you're on Facebook or on the email list, I'll notify you that way. But we'll definitely do this again. I think that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, so Diane is from Oregon. Yeah, and from New Zealand. So that's cool. We got people from all over. I know a lot of people came from the lamp school in the Philippines. So that's great that people are coming in from all over. So good to chat with you. I hope that was helpful. Australia, awesome. So I hope that was helpful. We'll do it again next week. We'll see you then. I'll just sign off for now. Again, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. You can email me. You can talk to me on Facebook. And I'll go back at this and look at this and see if we need to make any tweaks. But I think that's it for now. I'll see you next time.